At most times, living inside the Beltway of DC and working with the UN on global issues can feel a long way from Little America. But one thing that I've learned from all the girls that I've met around the country and around the world is that we all have a lot more in common than we might think. I'm going to share with you 4 key lessons that I've learned from girls in nearly every corner of the globe and how we can all apply those lessons to change the world. Lesson 1, no matter what hand life has dealt you, it's important to pay it forward. Growing up in a small town, I knew I was lucky. I had a great community of support, great schools, and lots of family around. So much about my life experience and professional journey has had to do with luck. I was lucky to be born in a country that mandates education. I was lucky to not be born in a country ravaged by poverty, drug cartels, or war-torn conflict. If we nonprofit, government, and business leaders really want to change the world, we need to listen to the teenagers who are on the forefront of activism in small towns and big cities, nationally and internationally. Early on at Girl Up, I met an incredible, lucky 13-year-old girl named Annie. She grew up in Beverly Hills, California. As Girl Up opened her eyes to the injustices that other girls were experiencing, she responded, "That's not fair." And she was right. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that Annie and I were lucky to go to school every day, that we had all the luxuries and conveniences that we needed to prosper, while a girl in Ethiopia or Malawi was married at 13. Annie had never traveled to these countries, but she inherently knew that at 13, she wanted to be in school. She didn't want to get married, and she certainly wasn't ready to start a family. Annie is now studying at Brown University, has interned on Capitol Hill, and I know that she will carry that fight for justice that was inspired back when she was 13 with her for the rest of her life. On the other side of that luckiness scale, in 2015, I was able to travel to Mangochi, Malawi, a beautiful community full of warm and welcoming people. Girl Up provided Malawian girls bicycles so that they could get to school, sometimes 20 miles away, that they were traveling by foot one way. That caused many of them to drop out and end their futures. One of the bike recipients that I met on that trip was Khadija. I still remember her and her commitment to school. She traveled the 10 miles to school, but actually slept on the floor of her classroom for months at a time because she was so committed to getting an education so she could earn an income to support her and her family. Khadija wasn't born into the lucky circumstances I was. I was so inspired by her resilience. She didn't give up. She persevered. And when she received that bike, she didn't stop there. She used her newfound freedom and opportunity to inspire every girl she met to stay in school and hope for their dreams. Khadija and Annie grew up worlds apart, but they both shared a common goal: to inspire and empower other girls, no matter their circumstances. As I look back and I see this community really recognizes the value of our upbringing. At times in our world, it can be very overwhelming and helpless right now as we see everything happening. I know I feel that way at times. But I think of Annie and Khadija. I think of their resilience and their perseverance. And it reminds me to double down on my commitment to help those who aren't as lucky as me. Lesson 2, youth voices are powerful. We need to give them a platform and listen. I, for one, am not at all surprised about the rise in power that we are seeing in today's youth movement. Every great change our country and our world has experienced has had a group of hopeful, energized young people at its heart. From the civil rights movement, women's voting rights, ending apartheid, and now, March for Our Lives, to Me Too, Standing Rock, and Black Lives Matter, teenagers and young people are leading change here in the U.S. and around the world. They're more connected and informed than ever, and they're just as passionate as those generations who have made change before them. One of the most inspiring girl activists I've ever met is Alexis. She is truly one of my girl heroes. I promise she would be one of yours too. Alexis grew up in a relatively poor community in Carpinteria, California. Her mother died in childbirth, and she was raised by her working-class single father. Alexis has cerebral palsy. Alexis received a full ride to Stanford University. She was at Stanford during the Brock Turner sexual assault case. She saw a problem, and she felt compelled to act. The scary path, which is actually what it was called by all at Stanford, an unlit, unpaved, scary path that was connecting multiple fraternity houses on campus, where that particular sexual assault took place and many before it. Alexis and the Scary Path Task Force that she started worked tirelessly for years, advocating to the administration to pave and light that path. In 2016, she succeeded and likely saved many girls from being a victim of another college campus rape. Alexis had the confidence to fight, to speak up, and to work with adults to make change. Young leaders today have all of the tools that they need to make change. It is up to us to encourage them and to listen when they demand it. Lesson 3. Today's young people value their differences. They value diversity of perspective. We really need to follow their lead. I have learned more about inclusivity and equity in the last couple years through my work with Girl Up than I ever did in my whole life, and definitely not something that I was taught when I was young. Teenage girls of Girl Up have taught me so much about leading from a place that considers and includes the unique perspective of every girl and every person. They have taught me about gender identity, racial identity, religious beliefs, and how these parts of our collective identities don't actually have to set us apart. They can bring us together to make our community even stronger. With all the negatives of social media, and certainly there are, I have seen firsthand the positives. How you can seek out and learn from and connect with people from different backgrounds. And you can, if you unblock them and actually listen, see different perspectives. I saw this actually come to life at our leadership summit this past summer in July. 3 Girl Up leaders were on stage from Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, and they were asked, "Where do you get your news?" They all confidently said that they were going to both CNN and Fox News. And not only were they scrolling through their Twitter pages, they were clicking on the links and reading the articles. Imagine that. They were actually seeking out multiple sides to the story so that they could create the picture for themselves. One of the ways that I've seen these differences and similarities play out was on one of the most impactful trips that I have taken with Girl Up. I traveled to Ethiopia in 2014 and visited a refugee camp there. Girls in this refugee camp, some of them had been living there for more than 10 years. And on that trip, I brought a Girl Up leader with me, Rocio. Rocio grew up in East LA, first-generation Mexican-American, and was the first in her family to be headed off to college. We didn't initially think that Rocio would have that much in common with the girls in the camp. But it was really clear, really quickly, through a pickup game of basketball, that a girl from East LA and a girl in a refugee camp in Ethiopia were just teenage girls, period. And on that trip, we met Namda. She was top in her class. The pride she felt for not just being the top girl, but the top student, reminded me of every other valedictorian I've met, whether the top in my class at Quincy Notre Dame or the Girl Up leaders who have held that role. Having the ability to go to school, excel, and hope for the future struck me on that trip as one of the most universal similarities in the world. I learned on that trip that if we can look for our similarities first, and if we can find common ground when we first meet someone, We'll value our differences in a whole new light. And finally, lesson 4. Taking action inspires leadership now and in the future. If you only remember one thing that I've shared with you today, remember this. The sooner you see the positive impact of your actions, the more confident you will be continuing to act. Leadership through action will mold you to keep leading. Young people today don't have to, shouldn't, and frankly aren't waiting until they grow up to change the world. They are coming together from exactly where they're starting, and they're bringing each other along. I met Abhilasha, fantastic leader, in rural India near Udaipur. Many girls in her community were forced into early marriage, and Girl Up had been supporting a UN program there that provides informal education to these girls twice a month. They take 2 days out of their month, out of the marble mines where they work, and earn $2 a day, which is a lot of money for their families. But through this informal program, they are learning valuable life skills for themselves. Things like saving money, nutrition, reproductive health, how to negotiate to achieve their goals. Abhilasha is a peer leader of one of these groups. She sits with these girls and teaches them these skills. And as a local leader, she works tirelessly to reach and inspire every girl in her community, to remind them that they can stay in school and that they can hope for their future. You know, I've learned so much in my 7 years with Girl Up, from remembering to pay it forward, to listening to young people, to really valuing our differences, and of course, taking action. As we celebrate International Day of the Girl on October 11th, I think of the girl heroes in my life: Annie, Khadija, Alexis, Rocio, Namda, and Abhilasha. And I think of my own leadership journey from Quincy to big cities across this country and my travels around the world. And I want you to know I am so hopeful for the future because this generation of young people is committed to making it better. And I think that they will bring us all back together as humanity. If we can all take a lesson from their playbook, we can make change here in Little America, and we can make change for girls all around the world. Thank you.